You who just clicked on this video most likely know what Bedwars is in some way. Maybe you're an active Bedwars player or an active subscriber of my channel, or maybe you've only heard about Bedwars like one time. But what I can say for sure is that Bedwars is one of Minecraft's most iconic game modes, really of all time. But it hasn't always been like this. Let's take a look at the history of Hypixel Bedwars. Let's go back to 2016 when we saw the first glimpse of Bedwars. At first, it was a minigame introduced to the prototype lobby to see how much people liked it and to see whether the Hypixel devs should have made it into a fully fledged game mode on the network. And the fact that I've made this video, you can probably tell it performed pretty well. The hype bar for Bedwars in the prototype lobby was eventually maxed out, which led to it being added to Hypixel as an official game. The hype meter was a way for people to vote out of all of the different minigames in the prototype lobby at that time, and would guide the devs as to what to continue pursuing, and Bedwars was clearly the one.
Bedwars seems to be what everyone is hyped up about.
Initially, there was no leveling system for Bedwars, which we now know as stars, and there was only two versions of Bedwars, or two game modes of Bedwars to choose from: 3v3v3v3 or 4v4v4v4. Despite this, Bedwars regularly saw a player base in the thousands after only releasing the prototype a few days before. Also, a little fun fact, before Bedwars was made into a full game, sandstone was a block you could buy from the shop, which also had a different look from what we know today. And also, you would only spawn in with a wooden pickaxe instead of a wooden sword like you do now. Eventually, if we fast forward a little bit, Hypixel Bedwars was officially released as a real game on June 29th, 2017. After then, it continued to gain a huge player base, and eventually it overtook Skywars, which was one of the biggest game modes back then. The full release of Bedwars v 1.0 was obviously the biggest update of all time. It introduced a bunch of new maps, including most of my personal favourites, and also introduced cosmetics, leaderboards, and the Bedwars leveling system, as well as a bunch of other different important things. Some other features that were added in 2017 includes both glass and clay blocks, bridge eggs, a new haste perk, and the favourite items and recommended items added to the shop. This isn't mentioning all the YouTubers who started becoming well known in the Bedwars community during this time, like Technoblade, Preston, and we started seeing people like Gamerboy80 and Purple. Now, if we fast forward again to April 30th, 2018, the Dreams mode was added to the Bedwars lobby, initially including the Rush mode, Castle, and Ultima, with more being added later on. Also during 2018, the 4v4 mode was added, but sadly other than that, not much else happened in this year. In 2019, the only big update we saw this year was the 1.6 update, which introduced the pop-up tower for the first ever week of the item rotations. Item rotations were eventually removed, but then revamped and re-added into the game later in late 2022. Other than this, some new maps were added, the Voidless Dream mode was added, and some other small bug fixes and some dislike maps got removed. Next is 2020, which was a huge year for Bedwars. We saw the rise of tons of new YouTubers and creators, and Bedwars saw its peak players of all time. This obviously was due to COVID, which significantly affected Hypixel for the year and the year after. Although 2020 was Hypixel Bedwars' biggest year, no real large updates were made, with the next update of Bedwars practice modes being added during 2021. Despite the lack of significant updates, 2020 was when I myself found Bedwars, and when maybe a lot of you guys did as well. Some things that did happen during 2020 though was a Bedwars tournament and the rise of It's Glimpse, Sammy Green, Wally Bear, people like Tommy in it,
my ball is gonna die,
and many more. Fast forward to 2021, as mentioned earlier, the only main update was the practice mode added into the lobby. To start with, this included bridging and MLG clutching, but later both fireball and TNT jumping practice were also added. Other than that, a few quality of life updates were made, but nothing super major. But like the year before, the hype continued on into this year. In 2022, when Hypixel Bedwars looked like it was going down, Hypixel brought back item rotation. New items were added to go along with this, like sugar cans, which were like shurikens, and sugar cookies, which gave you some boost, and this brought a much needed change to Bedwars. This year, Bedwars had a significant drop in average daily players from the prior 2 years, since quarantine and restrictions lessened. Moving on into 2023, pearl clutching and bow practice were added into the practice mode, a ton of new maps were added, and then only a few months ago, Bedwars received the Slumber Hotel update. They completely remodeled the lobby and added some new quests and cosmetics to be earned by playing Bedwars. Now, moving on into 2024, nothing really significant has happened yet, at least update-wise. The only thing that has happened is that I've made an awesome video that I know you'll love and that you should go watch right now. Trust me, it will be worth your time.